Faye Dorsey hadn't even looked up when she slid the glass across the polished teakwood bar until the deep voice said, "That's not what I ordered, but I think I'll take it anyway if it means you'll look at me like that again." Her eyes snapped up from the cocktail napkin she was folding. The man leaning on the bar wasn't in swim trunks and a tank top like the rest of the guests. He wore white linen pants, a navy button-down rolled at the sleeves, and a gold watch that probably cost more than her monthly rent back in Miami. His dark hair was tousled like he belonged here on a private island resort where the ocean was bluer than the sky and the drinks were overpriced, but his smile didn't match the rest of them. It wasn't smug, it was curious. "Oh, sorry," Faye said quickly, grabbing the wrong drink back. "That was for the woman at the end. What did you order?" He tilted his head. "I said I wanted whatever your favorite drink was." Faye blinked. "You actually want that?" The man shrugged. "Do I look like I'm lying?" She narrowed her eyes a little. "You're either a flirt or really bad at ordering drinks." He gave a slow grin. "Can't I be both?" Faye rolled her eyes but turned to mix the drink again. "You're definitely not from around here." "I'm here for a few days," he said. "Needed a break." "From what?" "Buying islands," she joked, sliding a new glass his way. He laughed. "Not this one. That's someone else's headache." She didn't press. She'd learned not to ask too many questions here. People who came to Coral Cay Resort liked their privacy, especially the rich ones. Faye had been bartending at the exclusive island retreat for 6 months now. It paid well, the tips were insane, and best of all, no one cared about her past. They cared more about whether their mojito had mint or basil. "I'm Quinn Maddox," he said, sipping the drink. Faye raised an eyebrow. "You're telling me your real name?" "Should I not?" She gave him a playful look. "Most people here just say something like 'call me Jack' and hope I don't remember their face when they leave." He held out his hand. "I insist, Quinn Maddox." "And you are?" "Faye." "Just Faye, Faye Dorsey," she said, folding her arms. "But you don't need my last name. You're only here for a few days, remember?" He looked at her like she'd said something funny. "I think I just changed my mind." Faye didn't know why, but her heart did a small flip. Over the next few days, Quinn kept coming back, always to her bar, always asking for her favorite drink, always staying longer than he needed to. He didn't try cheesy lines after that first day. He asked questions, real ones, like what brought her here, what she wanted to do after this. If she liked the stars better from the beach or the cliffs, she found herself answering him, telling him about her love for painting and how she hadn't touched a brush in over a year, about leaving behind a life that didn't feel like hers anymore, about how this island had become some strange, sunny limbo, and he listened, really listened. By day 5, she was looking for him before her shift started. By day 7, she was staying late just to talk to him after the last guests left. And by day 8, he kissed her. It wasn't some planned thing. It happened on the empty pier, under string lights swaying in the breeze, with the sound of waves lapping at the posts. He was telling her about his favorite memory from childhood, how he once got lost in a museum in Rome, and ended up giving tourists directions, because he knew the map better than the staff. "So basically, you were a 10-year-old tour guide. Bold of you to assume I wasn't still 10 last week," he said, grinning. She laughed, and he just looked at her. Then he leaned in and kissed her like he'd been waiting for the right second, and that second had finally come. It was soft at first, but then she kissed him back, and it deepened into something that felt like a wrong turn she was glad she took. "Tell me to stop," he whispered against her lips. "Why would I?" she whispered back. They didn't sleep together that night. He walked her back to her staff cabin and kissed her again at her door, longer this time, like he didn't want to leave, but the next morning he was gone. Faye stood behind the bar, scanning the beach, the pool, the lobby. Nothing. No Quinn. No note. Nothing. She told herself it didn't matter. That he was just another well-dressed guest with a smile and a secret, that she didn't fall for guys like that, not anymore. 2 days passed. Then 3. Then 5. And on the 6th, she was pouring tequila over ice when she heard a voice behind her say, "Still making your favorite?" Her hands froze. She turned and there he was, back in that navy shirt, a little wrinkled now, his hair messier than before, and something in his eyes that hadn't been there earlier. "Where did you go?" she asked, heart pounding. "I had to fly back for a meeting," he said. "I wasn't supposed to stay long." "But I couldn't stop thinking about you," Faye laughed, but it came out shaky. "You disappeared without saying goodbye." "I know," he said. "I messed up. I thought if I left quick it'd be easier, but it wasn't. I had 3 meetings in Manhattan, and all I could think about was the way you looked at me when I told you about that museum." She stared at him. "What do you want, Quinn?" "I want to take you out," he said. "Somewhere off this island, somewhere I can show you who I really am." She hesitated. He pulled a black card from his wallet and placed it on the bar. "Fly back with me, just for the weekend. I'll get you home before your next shift." She looked at the card, then at him. "And who are you really?" He took a breath. "CEO of Maddox Tech. I built it from scratch. I sold my first app when I was 19. I've been working every day since." Faye didn't move. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want that to be the first thing you knew about me," he added. She stared at him, stunned. "You're worth a lot," he said. "But I'd give all of it just to have another night with you on that pier." Silence stretched. Then Faye whispered, "Okay," he blinked. "Okay, I'll come with you." Quinn smiled, and it wasn't the charming kind, it was pure relieved joy. "Pack a bag," he said. "We're leaving in an hour." Faye leaned over the bar, grabbed a napkin, and scribbled something on it. "What's that?" "My shift cover," she said. "You think I'd leave without saying goodbye?" Quinn looked at her like she was the only thing that made sense. And maybe for the first time in his life she was. The jet didn't feel like transportation, it felt like a shift in reality. Faye hadn't even known planes like this existed outside of movies. Cream leather seats, crystal tumblers, a flight attendant who addressed her by name before she'd even introduced herself. And Quinn, he didn't act like someone showing off. He sank into the seat across from her, took off his watch, and rolled up his sleeves like he was settling into something familiar and worn. "You okay?" he asked, watching her eyes dance across the cabin. "I'm trying to figure out if I've been kidnapped or if this is just the fanciest Uber of my life," she said, leaning back cautiously. "Definitely the second one. You'd be a very difficult hostage," he replied, grinning. She looked out the window. The island had already disappeared beneath a sea of clouds. "You didn't even ask if I had a passport." "I already knew you did. Your employer requires it for international hires." She blinked at him. "You checked on me. I asked the resort manager your last name, that's all." "I didn't dig," he said. "But I had to know if I could get you home if I convinced you to come." Faye studied him. "You always plan this far ahead, only when something matters." The flight landed just past midnight, but the city never slept. Manhattan glittered like it was trying to compete with the stars. A black car waited on the tarmac. The driver didn't ask questions when Quinn opened the door for her first. They drove through the city, past glowing storefronts and traffic that pulsed like a heartbeat. Faye kept her hands folded in her lap. She wasn't nervous, she didn't get nervous, but there was something electric under her skin she hadn't felt in years. Wonder, maybe, or risk. He didn't take her to a hotel. The car pulled into an underground garage beneath a skyscraper in Tribeca. The elevator inside didn't have buttons, just a key code, which he tapped in before the doors shut them inside a glass box. "You live here?" she asked as they ascended. "Top floor." Of course he did. When the doors opened, her breath caught. It wasn't the size of the penthouse that stunned her, though it was easily bigger than any apartment she'd ever seen. It was the way it felt, warm, lived in. A charcoal sketch leaned against the wall near the window. A cabinet stood open in the kitchen, cluttered with mismatched mugs. An olive tree in a clay pot reached toward the ceiling. "This doesn't look like a billionaire's place," she said quietly. "I don't let anyone else decorate it," he replied, dropping his keys in a bowl by the door. "That helps." She stepped in slowly. There was no marble staircase or gold-trimmed anything, just wood, linen, and soft light. He watched her take it in. "I swear I'm not trying to impress you," he said. "I just wanted you to see where I actually live, not some rented suite, not a facade." I wasn't expecting a facade, she said. Most people do. Faye walked toward the windows. The skyline was a living painting. She pressed her fingers to the glass. You see this every night. Doesn't mean much alone, he said. But right now, yeah, it means something. She turned slowly. I don't know what you're expecting from this. I'm not expecting anything, he said. I just didn't want to leave things unfinished. She watched him, unsure. Then she asked the question that had been circling her brain since the plane lifted off. Why me? He didn't hesitate. Because you didn't care who I was, and because I've never told anyone about that museum story, not even my sister. I don't know why I told you, I just did. Maybe you were drunk. No, he said, stepping closer. I was just honest. She didn't move as he reached for her hand. Faye, he said, voice low, I know this is fast, I know it's reckless, but I can't stop thinking about you, about how you looked that night under the lights, about how you listened like you actually saw me, and it scared the hell out of me because no one ever does. She swallowed hard. He took another step. I don't want this to be a weekend, I want more, but I'll take whatever you'll give me. Her heart beat louder than the city outside. I don't belong in this world, she whispered. Then I'll come to yours, he said, wherever that is. She didn't speak. She leaned in and kissed him instead. He didn't rush it. His hands rested gently on her waist, his touch steady, like he was afraid too much pressure would break the moment. And maybe it would have. But she didn't want to pull away when they parted. He rested his forehead against hers. I don't have a plan, she said. Good, he murmured. I'm tired of plans. That night she didn't sleep in the guest room. She slept in his bed, tangled in cotton sheets, with the faint sounds of traffic far below and his hand resting against the curve of her back, like he'd always meant to hold her there. In the morning, he was already up, shirtless in the kitchen, making coffee like it was the most natural thing in the world. I don't usually do this, she said, walking in barefoot, one of his shirts hanging past her knees. I hope not, he replied, handing her a mug. I like thinking I'm the exception. She took a sip. You're something, he raised an eyebrow, that good or bad, still deciding. He laughed, and she felt a tug in her chest she didn't want to name. Later, he took her to a gallery in Soho. It wasn't open to the public, yet the curator was a friend, apparently, and the walls were hung with abstract landscapes she couldn't stop staring at. You said you used to paint, he said, standing beside her. She nodded. It got too hard. What did? Letting people see what I felt. He looked at the canvas in front of them. Then paint for yourself, no one else. She turned to him. Why do you keep doing this? Doing what? Giving me things I didn't ask for. Because I think you deserve them, he said. And because I can. That night, he took her to a rooftop restaurant that didn't have a sign, where the view stretched all the way to the river and they served food on plates that looked like sculpture. She wore a black dress he'd had delivered to his place while she was in the shower. It fit perfectly. She didn't ask how he knew her size. Over dessert, he reached across the table. I want you to stay, he said. She blinked. Here? With me. In the city, he said. Not forever, just try it, a week maybe, see what this is. She opened her mouth, but he stopped her. I know it's insane, he said, but I haven't felt like this in years. I don't want it to end just because the weekend's over. She hesitated. The city buzzed around them, glittering and loud. Okay, she said finally. 1 week. Quinn's eyes didn't sparkle, they burned, hot and certain. 1 week, he repeated, lifting his glass. Starting now. Faye stood on the edge of the rooftop terrace of Quinn's penthouse, holding a brush that hadn't touched canvas in over a year. The crisp morning air whispered around her, cool but not cold, and the city stretched out in all directions beneath her bare feet. A fresh canvas stood in front of her, sunlight slanting across it. Quinn had set it up before he left for a meeting, along with a note scribbled in messy handwriting. Saw this and thought of you. She hadn't painted since before she left Florida. Not after the gallery rejected her portfolio without explanation. Not after her father's debts swallowed the last of her savings. Not after she sold her brushes to pay rent. But somehow, standing here with a skyline behind her and the faint scent of oil paint clinging to the air, her hands didn't shake the way they used to. She dipped the brush into cool blue, then paused. "You're not afraid of blank space," Quinn had told her the night before. "You're just afraid of what you'll fill it with." She hadn't admitted he was right. Now she let the brush touch the canvas. A single stroke, then another. The lines came slowly, cautiously, but they came. By the time Quinn returned, jacket slung over his shoulder and phone tucked in his back pocket. She'd filled half the canvas with swirling lines that curved toward a rising horizon. He stopped just inside the open terrace doors. "Is that what I think it is?" "No," she said without turning. "It's not a skyline, it's a feeling." He stepped closer, careful not to cast a shadow over her work. "What kind of feeling?" "Something I didn't think I'd get back." "Then I won't ask any more questions," he said softly. She glanced at him. "You're in a suit." "Board meeting, I left early." "Why?" He shrugged. "You were painting." Faye turned toward him. "You skipped out on your own board meeting because I picked up a brush." "I left early," he corrected. "There's a difference." She raised an eyebrow. "Is there?" "I trust my team, and I wanted to be here when you finished." Her chest tightened, but she said nothing. Instead, she set the brush down and wiped her hands on the apron he'd found in one of his kitchen drawers. "Come with me tonight," he said suddenly. "Where?" "There's a gala at the Maverin Foundation. It's black tie, art donors, museum curators, the usual." "I don't have a dress." "You will." She narrowed her eyes. "You can't keep buying me things." "I didn't. It's borrowed." "From a designer who owes me a favor." She studied him for a long moment. "You really think I belong at something like that?" "No," he said. "I think they don't deserve to have you there. But I want them to see you anyway." Later that evening, she stood in front of a mirror in a charcoal silk gown that hugged her waist and fell in soft waves to the floor. It wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. The dress whispered elegance without shouting for attention. Her earrings were on loan from a showroom she didn't dare ask the value of, and her heels clicked against the marble floor of Quinn's lobby as they stepped into the waiting car. The gala was held in a converted library, its towering ceilings strung with cascading lights and live violinists tucked into alcoves. Waiters offered champagne in cut crystal flutes. Everything felt like it belonged in another world. Quinn didn't leave her side. He introduced her to every person they passed, never as someone he was seeing, never as his date, always as Faye Dorsey, the artist from Coral Cay, always with pride in his voice. At one point, a woman draped in emerald satin leaned in and asked, "Where did you say your last show was?" "I didn't," Faye replied. "I haven't had one." The woman blinked. "Oh, then what brings you here?" Quinn answered before Faye could speak. "She's the most talented painter I've met in years. And I've met a lot of them." The woman smiled politely and drifted away. Faye turned to him. "You didn't have to say that." "I didn't say it for her." Later, as they stood near the bar, a silver-haired man approached. "Quinn," he said. "Haven't seen you at one of these in months." "Been busy," Quinn replied coolly. "This is Faye." The man's gaze swept over her. "Ah, the artist. I heard you were bringing someone different tonight." Quinn's jaw tensed. "Meaning?" "Just that it's nice to see you with someone who's not trying to pitch a startup over dinner." Faye held his gaze. "I don't pitch anything. I serve drinks and paint things that don't make sense to most people." The man looked faintly amused. "Refreshing." As soon as he walked away, Faye turned to Quinn. "You didn't tell me they'd all be like that." "They're not all like that, but most of them are." He didn't deny it. She stepped back. "This isn't my world. I'm not asking you to live in it," he said. "Just walk through it with me sometimes." She didn't respond. Instead, she walked toward the balcony overlooking the city and braced her hands on the railing. He followed, slower this time. "I thought you brought me here to impress them," she said. "But you brought me here to prove something." "I brought you here because this is part of my life," he said. "And if I want you in it, you should see what that means." She turned toward him. "And what if I don't want to be a part of it?" "Then you won't be," he said, voice low. "But I had to try." Faye looked out at the skyline. The same city she'd seen from his terrace now looked colder, sharper. "You want me to fit into this," she said, "but I don't." "I want you to be exactly who you are," he said. "Even if that shakes everything else around me." She turned to face him again. Then stop trying to make me feel like I need to prove myself to people who will never understand me. I'm not, he said. I'm trying to show you that I'm proud of you, of what you've survived, of what you're becoming. I don't care if they understand you, I just want you to know I do. She blinked, suddenly unsure if she wanted to scream or kiss him. Instead, she whispered, I'm scared. So am I, he said. They stood in silence until the music inside changed and the city lights blurred. Then she reached for his hand. Let's go home, she said. Before I start believing I belong here, he squeezed her hand gently. You belong wherever you decide to stand. Neither of them said another word on the way back. But later that night, as she curled beside him in bed, facing the skyline in the dark, she whispered into the quiet, I don't want this to be a week anymore. He didn't respond right away. Then, softly, neither do I. The studio space Quinn leased for her sat 3 stories above a quiet cobblestone street in the West Village, tucked between a bookstore and a florist that only sold heirloom roses. Faye stood in the center of the sunlit room, her fingers streaked with cadmium yellow and burnt sienna, her hair twisted into a knot she hadn't bothered to fix in hours. She'd been painting since dawn, pushed by something restless and warm she couldn't quite name. Quinn stood against the far wall, arms folded, watching in silence. He hadn't interrupted once. When she finally stepped back from the canvas and exhaled, he crossed the room and handed her a bottle of mineral water. You've been at it for 5 hours, he said. Do you even know what time it is? I lost track, she admitted, uncapping the bottle. This one's different. It doesn't feel like I'm trying anymore, it's just happening. He looked at the painting. There was no skyline, no obvious form, just movement, like a windstorm caught in color. What are you going to call it? Pulse, he nodded slowly. That fits. Faye leaned against the windowsill, eyes still on her work. I've been thinking about applying to the residency at the Laurent Foundation. They take emerging artists for 6 months. It's in Paris. Quinn's expression didn't shift, but something in his posture stilled. That's incredible. Have you started the application? I started the essay yesterday, she said. They want a statement about how your work reflects growth. I don't even know what that means yet. It means you're ready, he said. Whether you think you are or not, she looked at him. You'd really be okay if I left for half a year, he stepped closer, brushing a speck of paint from her cheek with the back of his knuckle. I'd rather have 6 months apart than watch you wonder what might have happened if you'd gone. Her throat tightened. You're not afraid I'll change? I hope you do, he said. I hope you become everything you've been holding back. She stared at him, her heart loud in her chest. I don't know how to say thank you for all of this. You already did, he said, by showing up. The next morning, she printed the application. By evening, it was finished and sealed. A week later, she got the call. She was in Quinn's kitchen, barefoot and humming, when her phone rang. She answered, expecting a gallery assistant or her landlord. Instead, a clipped French accent told her she'd been accepted. The program began in 5 weeks. When she hung up, Quinn looked up from his laptop. You got it, he said, already sure. She nodded slowly. I leave in 5 weeks. He closed the laptop and stood. Then we make them count. And they did. He took her to an abandoned train station turned art installation in Queens. She brought him to a midnight poetry reading in Brooklyn where no one knew his name. They spent afternoons in the studio, nights walking aimlessly through neighborhoods neither of them had ever explored, mornings tangled in linen sheets with the world outside on pause. They didn't talk about what would happen after. Not yet. Then 3 days before her departure, she walked into the studio to find it empty, no canvases, no brushes, no trace of her work, her chest seized. A note sat in the center of the floor, taped to a single easel, meet me where it all began. She dropped her bag and ran. The flight to Coral Cay left in 2 hours. By the time she arrived at the private hangar, a black car was already waiting. The driver didn't speak, just opened the door and handed her a folded piece of paper. She recognized Quinn's handwriting instantly. I don't want to say goodbye in a city that never stops. I want to say it where time slowed down. Where I found you behind a bar with salt on your skin and fire in your eyes. Come find me. The sun was low when she stepped off the plane. The resort had changed, little same swaying palms, same ocean breeze. But something in the air felt different. Charged. She followed the path past the main building, past the pool, past the pier. Then she saw him. Standing where they'd first kissed under string lights that had been rehung just for this. A small table stood nearby, 2 chairs, a bottle of something chilled in a silver bucket. He turned when she stepped onto the dock. "You flew me here?" she asked, breathless. "I needed to do this right," he said. She took a step closer. "Do what?" "This," he said quietly, pulling something small from his pocket. "Before you go, before we both change." Her heart stopped. He didn't kneel. He just opened the box, revealing a ring of gold and sapphire, simple and fierce. "I don't want you to stay. I don't want you to choose me over your work. I want you to become everything you're meant to be, and I want to be the one cheering the loudest while you do it." He swallowed, meeting her gaze. "But I also want this. A future. A promise. Not later, now." She stared at him, hands trembling. "I'm not asking you to marry me today," he added. "I'm asking you to believe this matters enough to wait for. I'll visit. I'll write. I'll build a life that makes room for yours, if you'll let me." She stepped forward slowly until she could feel his breath. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more certain." Tears welled behind her eyes, but she didn't cry. She reached for the ring and slid it onto her finger. Then she kissed him hard, breathless, full of every word she didn't have. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "Yes." He grinned, brushing his thumb across her cheek. "You're going to knock Paris off its feet. And you're going to be here when I get back. I'll be exactly where you left me," he said. They sat at the table on the pier, eating cold fruit and laughing under the stars, the sea lapping beneath them like a pulse. No countdown, no panic, just a promise. When she boarded the plane a few days later, she didn't look back. But in her bag, tucked between her sketchbook and passport, was a receipt from a bar on Coral Cay, 1 drink. Paid in full. A tip scrawled in Quinn's handwriting. "Come home to me." Quinn waited at gate C12, the collar of his coat turned up against the wind slicing through JFK's private terminal. His fingers were curled loosely around a bouquet of violets and white lilies flowers. He had flown in from Amsterdam that morning. Not because Faye liked flowers, she insisted she didn't, but because she once mentioned, in passing, that they used to grow wild outside her childhood bedroom window in Tallahassee. She hadn't seen them since. The jet appeared slowly, its nose cutting through the silver haze of winter twilight. As it taxied to a stop, Quinn exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding for 6 months. When the door finally opened, she appeared at the top of the stairs in a navy coat too thin for the temperature, a satchel slung over her shoulder, and paint still under one thumbnail. She paused, scanning the tarmac, and the second her eyes found him, everything else, wind, noise, distance, disappeared. She ran. He dropped the bouquet on the seat beside him just before her arms wrapped around his neck, her breath catching as she buried her face into his shoulder. "I missed you," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I counted every day," he breathed into her hair. They didn't pull apart, not even as the flight crew wheeled her luggage toward them. Time hadn't dulled anything. If anything, it had made the ache sharper, the need deeper. Back at the penthouse, the city buzzed below them, but Faye didn't ask a single question about what had changed. She didn't need to. The walls were still lined with her earlier canvases. He hadn't moved a single one, and the olive tree she'd teased him about had grown 2 new branches. "You kept everything," she said, trailing a finger along the edge of a frame. "Keeping you was the only thing that made sense." She turned to face him. Paris was everything, but it was also lonely sometimes. Quinn stepped closer. "You didn't call." "I wanted to. But I needed to know I could do it on my own." He nodded, understanding. "And now," she tilted her head. "Now I'm done doing it alone." Later that evening, after dinner on the rooftop, blankets pulled around them, mugs of cider steaming between their hands, Faye leaned her head against his shoulder. "I sold a painting," she said softly. "Last week." To the Musée d'Art Moderne. He turned to look at her. You're kidding. They want to feature it in a rotating exhibit, she said, but I told them they'd have to wait. Why? Because I'm going to need a break, she said, from everything. I've been chasing something for so long I forgot what it's like to be still. Quinn hesitated. You want to pause? She looked up at him, eyes steady. I want to start. The next morning, they walked through a sun-drenched loft in Tribeca, an open space with exposed beams, massive windows, and a northern view that spilled with natural light. Quinn handed the realtor a check without blinking. You're sure? She asked, her fingers grazing the edge of a window pane. He stepped behind her, his arms sliding around her waist. It's yours. Studio, gallery, home, whatever you want it to be. She turned in his arms. What about your place? I'll be here, he said. With you. If you want that, she smiled. I do. They moved in 2 weeks later. The walls slowly filled with her new work boulder, more abstract, unafraid. Quinn installed a small espresso bar in the corner and insisted on manning it himself every morning, even though he made the worst coffee either of them had ever tasted. She never corrected him. One afternoon in April, after a gallery showing that drew more attention than anyone expected, Faye returned to find the loft glowing with candlelight. Dozens of flickering flames lined the staircase up to the mezzanine. A string quartet played softly from the corner, and in the center of the room stood Quinn, dressed in black, holding a small velvet box in both hands. She stopped in the doorway, stunned. What is this? She asked, breath catching. He smiled, not a grin, not flirty, just something quiet and sure. You said yes before, but I want to ask you again, this time without an ocean between us, without time limits, without waiting. She stepped forward slowly, heart thudding. I love you, he said, voice steady. Not just for the way you see the world, but for the way you've changed mine. I want to be the man who makes space for you every day. I want to build a life around your fire, not dim it. Her eyes welled, but she didn't cry. She took the box from his hands, opened it, and slid the ring onto her own finger. Then let's make it official, she breathed. Right here. Right now. They were married 3 weeks later on the roof of the loft, surrounded by only 20 people, close friends, a few artists, Quinn's sister, and the florist who refused to let anyone else handle the bouquet. Faye wore a dress with no train and painted something on the hem herself that no one noticed until afterward. A winding splash of ocean blew across the hem, like a tide pulling forward. After the ceremony, they danced barefoot under the lights strung between the beams, the city rising around them like a witness. You realize, she whispered against his chest as they swayed, that none of this was part of the plan. Good, Quinn murmured. Plans are overrated. That night, he carried her inside with the city still singing outside their windows, and she laughed into his kiss, soft and sure and entirely hers. The following spring, Faye opened her first gallery show in the new space downstairs. People from every corner of the art world came: curators, collectors, students, strangers. Every piece sold within 48 hours. When a journalist asked her how she defined success, she smiled. Freedom. Love. And a man who lets me leave the dishes in the sink when I'm painting. Quinn, leaning against the back wall, lifted his glass in silent toast. Later that night, they walked home hand in hand, the city warm and humming around them. And when they fell asleep, tangled in each other beneath a skylight full of stars, neither of them dreamed of anything else. Because everything they wanted was already right there.